Now, something we all know is that new technology kills jobs. And I mean, even the creator of Ethereum said it himself.
Do you feel like the destroyer of worlds here? I mean, you can essentially eliminate how many jobs by doing that?
Destroyer of jobs, creator of better ones.
Because that's pretty good.
And in this video, we are going to cover some trillion-dollar industries that are going to be revolutionized by blockchain and smart contracts. But before we start, 10K Trades is a brand new channel talking about investing, cryptocurrency, and other blockchain tokens. So guys, all I'm saying is go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and there will be much more content coming on in the future. Now let's get into it. As the implementation of blockchain continues to grow, we are literally seeing this technology change the world before our eyes. Just as the internet was changing the world at the beginning of the 21st century, blockchain is having that same effect. And people are really saying that blockchain really will have these same effects as the internet and change how we live our everyday lives. But obviously these changes do not happen overnight. Since 2008, blockchain was mostly tied to the success of the technology that created it, which is Bitcoin. But we are beginning to see blockchain become a star on its own with the creation of smart contracts, AI, and new coins such as Ethereum and Cardano. So now getting into the industries that are going to be revolutionized by blockchain and smart contracts. The first one is technically called ride hailing, but we're talking about Uber, Lyft, and even truck driving. Now, apps like Uber have already changed the game and made transportation and ride sharing so much easier, especially in cities. And while Uber seems like they have a business model that is made of steel, the implementation of blockchain will not only change how it works for drivers, but also how you call for a ride. And now Uber is a centralized network, which means Uber is responsible for you calling the ride, tracking your location, taking your payment, and then ultimately paying the driver. And then ultimately for all this, Uber charges fees for the service. And while so far this is a pretty good system, and I mean it's definitely better than what we used to have, but that doesn't mean that it can't get even better. And now the way that this would work on a decentralized system using blockchain is that the driver could upload their metadata as a profile. So this includes their verification, their reviews, their pricing, everything's on there. Then you would be able to go online, mark your location, and say where you want to go. Then the network would be able to decide which drivers are in your area, and depending on the prices, they would be able to match you up with the best driver for the ride. And while this process sounds kind of similar to what we already have, the difference is that it's dealing with a decentralized network rather than a centralized network. That means that there's no extra fees going in between the two of you, and that there's no centralized entity that's controlling the entire thing. So this means that not only more people would be able to join in on the process, but also there would be no middleman. So that means the cost of paying Uber for those fees are automatically taken out, and you're able to pay the driver directly. So that means that one, you're paying less for the ride, and also the driver is making more on his end. And that's not even bringing in the whole self-driving process and all that, because obviously that is a whole conversation on its own. And this system not only works for ride sharing, but it also could work for shipping and even truck driving. So the main question is, we don't know if Uber is going to implement this in their processes, or if there's going to be a new thing that's going to take over. And now the next industry that will be revolutionized is voting. Now, voting is one of the most outdated systems that we still have today. I mean, even in the past couple hundred years, you really haven't seen any major changes, except for the fact that we don't have to write down our votes on a piece of paper. We could just tap it on a screen. But that's really it. Because we still have to drive over to the voting booth, take our physical paperwork, stand in line to vote, and then finally we can go into the booth to vote. With everything going digital, this is definitely the last thing to do it, because there's so much fear about voter fraud. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I totally understand why. I mean, the last thing that we want is someone interfering with our election because they know how to hack into the system. But what if there was a way to verify every voter and ensure that no votes could be changed? Well, with blockchain, this might actually be possible. On a blockchain, all the information is encrypted and immutable, which is just a fancy word by saying it is set in stone and cannot be changed. And with the system using the blockchain, once you're registered to vote, you can go on and verify yourself on the blockchain and then show your location, and then you can vote online. So you put your vote in, and there is no way to change what you said. It is set in stone. And the blockchain is a distributed ledger, which means that everyone has access to it. Think about the internet. Everyone can go onto Google, right? Everyone can access this and see the blockchain. So there's not just a central entity that owns the entire thing. So that means that everyone can go on and verify and make sure that nothing has been changed. So that means if someone actually tried to change anything, that everyone could see it and it's obvious. This means that there's much more transparency and there's no way to hide anything. And another bonus is that you'd be able to see the results of the voting in real time. And it's no question that if people just had the opportunity to sit at home and vote from their smartphone or computer, there would be so much more people that are willing to vote and also they would vote more often. So this would make the voting process even more democratic, because that means we get a true representation of what everyone thinks, and I think ultimately this would just be a win-win situation for everyone. And you can even go a step further with the implementation of smart contracts, so that once the votes are all collected and a decision is made, the smart contract automatically puts that decision into place. So that means that the change is made in real time as soon as the votes are decided. And there are already some companies that are working to bring voting to the blockchain, such as Horizon State and Voter Apathy. And like I said before, while this would be a great thing for democracy, we are still a pretty far away from the actual implementation of this. Obviously, like I said, there's so much security, and we need insurance that there's no voter fraud or anything like that before we see it in these real elections. But we're definitely on our way. And now the third industry that's going to be revolutionized by blockchain is real estate. And now if you've ever gone through the process of buying a home or any other property, you know the struggle. Paperwork after paperwork, waiting for approvals from one person just to send it over to the other person, and then waiting for the approval from that person to finally get it back to you. And in many cases, there are multiple people with hands in the pot taking their cuts of the final price. But with the implementation of blockchain, it really can make this whole process a bit easier. One major way would be speeding up transactions and conveyancing of property deeds from one party to the next. Right now, brokers, lawyers, and banks all play a huge part in real estate, which means that they're all dipping their hand and taking a cut from the price. But by putting the information on the blockchain, you can ensure the privacy and the verification so that the buyer has everything that it needs in order to successfully carry out the purchase, while still keeping the safety for the seller. And with this, a thing like escrow may not even be needed anymore. You can code in a smart contract so that the funds are automatically transferred from one party to the next after both agreed upon terms have been successfully completed. So it's essentially using an escrow type service, but it's all in code. So you don't have to worry about a third party in order to do it. And this ensures the safety for both parties to make sure everything is traded successfully. And like I said before, with the implementation of blockchain, this really will cut out so many more of the middlemen that have their hands in the pot. So this means that there is less money spent by the buyer and more money in the pocket for the seller. So it's a good situation for both. And if you're a real estate agent, this does not mean that you're out of a job by any means. It's just saying that with the implementation of blockchain, it really could make your life a whole lot easier. And with this whole blockchain revolution, the question of why we need these huge centralized corporations is becoming harder and harder to answer as we're moving closer to fully decentralized systems. Now, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you have something to say, go ahead and leave it in the comments. 10K Trades is a brand new channel talking about investing, crypto, and other blockchain news. And guys, I promise there will be much more content coming out in the future. See you in the next video.